Will.
Poe? What are you doing up?
Will, the time has come.
Time for what?
It is time to make a video about Star Wars.
But I made a Star Wars video 4 weeks ago. And 3 weeks before that. Hey everyone, I'm Will, welcome back to my channel, and today we're talking about one of the greatest masterminds in cinematic history, the Senate himself, Sheev Palpatine.
I am the Senate.
Not yet.
As an omnipotent Sith Lord, he's making plans behind the scenes of every single Star War. So, I've decided to go full unhinged professor, break out the whiteboard markers, and attempt a critical analysis of the Emperor's long-con plan for galactic domination. In this video, we'll look at the prequels, and how Palpatine's plan unfolded throughout each of them. Now, before I get to mercilessly mocking his over-convoluted plan, I'd like us to remember one thing. Throughout this whole video, keep in mind that the thing Palpatine wants to do is control the galaxy. That is his endgame. He wants total power over everyone in the galaxy. And no matter how reliant on chance his plan becomes, remember, this is what he wants. So, it's time to start with one of the greatest films ever made. Star Wars Episode 1. Before I start picking apart Palpatine's plan, I'd like to explain to you all the individual elements that it involves. First, he organizes a trade blockade over the planet of Naboo. The Chancellor sends Jedi ambassadors. After these ambassadors are sent, the Trade Federation decides to invade Naboo with droids. The Queen and her friends escape, and they land on Tatooine, where they find a young slave boy named Anakin, who they enter in a pod race to buy his freedom because he's strong in the Force. He wins the pod race, he's free, he goes with them, but first they fight Darth Maul on Tatooine. The Sith Lord apprentice can't win. So from there, they escape to Coruscant, where Queen Amidala gets to speak in the Senate, but she calls for a vote of no confidence on the current Chancellor, who's Chancellor Valorum. After that, they go back to Naboo, where the invasion is actively going on. Anakin goes up in a spaceship, you know.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
Darth Maul's there, they fight. Qui-Gon dies. Padawan Obi-Wan defeats Sith apprentice Darth Maul. After which, Obi-Wan is actually allowed to train Anakin, despite the Council giving no indication that they'd be okay with that until this moment, and the film ends after Chancellor Valorum loses the vote of no confidence, and Senator Palpatine is appointed Chancellor. So I'm going to do this thing, where I record a tally every time something is entirely based on chance, and is not something a Sith Lord could predict or influence. We start out with the trade blockade, which he organized. Okay, we're cool. First example of chance, the Chancellor sends Jedi instead of real ambassadors, so 1. Example of chance number 2, instead of negotiating with the Jedi that's been sent to the ship, the Trade Federation immediately tries to murder them. They escape to the planet of Naboo, where they eventually regroup with the Queen and her associates. In that escape, things go just wrong enough with the hyperdrive that they specifically land on the desert planet of Tatooine, and not any other random planet in the Outer Rim. There, they happen to land very close to Mos Eisley, where they find a junk shop that just so happens to have the new hyperdrive that they so desperately need. Of course, at this junk shop with the hyperdrive that they so desperately need is a young slave boy who just conveniently happens to be working at this one shop on this one planet after he was conceived via the Force. I'm just gonna put like 3 for that one. They find Anakin. They are quickly able to realize how strong he is in the Force. I'm not going to say that's chance, because Qui-Gon seems like the type who's always looking, and of course they're sensitive to the Force. I buy that one. You know what? Fair play, Palpatine. That one wasn't due to chance. He then assumes they'll definitely want to free him no matter the cost. Assumes Anakin can win the pod race, which he does, and that Anakin will be willing to leave his mother and the enslavement of Watto the junk trader. From there, he has his apprentice, Darth Maul, approach them for seemingly no reason, because he doesn't really try to kill them, and he lets them escape. That's not chance, that's just a choice. So they get back to Coruscant, where Queen Amidala calls for a vote of no confidence in the Chancellor at the urging of Senator Palpatine. She seemed to like Valorum a decent amount, so his ability to convince her was clearly based on chance. We've reached the part where they go back to Naboo in order to counter the Trade Federation invasion of the planet. While they're doing that, Anakin hides in a spaceship. Since Palpatine's plan will inevitably center around Anakin, it's very important that he stays alive. So, The fact that this young boy, who is sent into space via autopilot and then
That's a good trick.
manages to survive this and return to the planet is an excellent example of Palpatine's plan being hoping for the best. So, the ever-patient Qui-Gon, who's wanted to train Anakin this whole time, it'd be much harder for him to lead Anakin to the dark side than his more fraternal relationship with Obi-Wan. So, Qui-Gon has to die, but he's a Master Jedi. And how would Palpatine know that would happen, especially when Qui-Gon easily held off Darth Maul earlier? So despite that, and despite the fact that his master was defeated, Obi-Wan slices Darth Maul in half and wins the battle. So despite everything the Council has said, to the contrary, at this exact point, Obi-Wan is suddenly allowed to train Anakin just because his master died. That doesn't make what they saw in Anakin any less dangerous. It just means they feel bad for him. And I don't know, I feel like emotions aren't supposed to cloud your judgment, Jedi Council. All this so the movie can end with Senator Palpatine becoming the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. Does that seem like a lot? I've got some good news for you. That's only the first movie in this trilogy. So, you may be wondering, what is the probability that Palpatine's plan just for the first movie would actually work? So, let's do some math. Starting off, we found that there are 16 chance occurrences within the first film required for Palpatine's plan to work. Keeping that in mind, I'll assume an incredibly generous 50% probability for each of these things going his way. And as you can see, 50% is 1/2, and we can also write that as 0.5. The probability of events occurring in sequence can be found by taking the probability, which is 1/2, and taking that to the x power, which is equal to the number of chance occurrences or events that are happening. So, since we know that that number is 16, we can take 1/2 to the 16th power, which will get us this very, very small number. This number means that there is a 0.00153% chance of Palpatine's plan actually working and enabling him to get into power. This, folks, is the ultimate Sith Lord people were talking about. So, it occurred to me while filming the last segment that if I attempted to catalog every single time that Palpatine's plan was based on chance, I would be here literally for the rest of my entire life. His plan is that luck-based. It's unbelievable that people think he's some sort of behind-the-scenes puppet master. He's just lucky. Keeping that in mind, for episodes 2 and 3, instead of going through like I did with The Phantom Menace, I'm just going to list off a couple points that are especially ridiculous. These movies are so dumb that I honestly can't remember that much about them, even though I've seen them all at least 10 times. So I've got the Wikipedia pages for both open so I can make sure I get my facts straight. This movie starts with Padme coming to Coruscant to vote against the creation of an army, and Palpatine wants an army to be created, so he decides to try and assassinate Padme. And this one assassination attempt is more convoluted than the entirety of the rest of the series, and I will let one of my favorite YouTubers, Cosmonaut Variety Hour, explain exactly what it is that happens.
So I'm gonna have everybody try to follow along with me real quick. So Palpatine needs Padme dead, but he doesn't want to do it himself. So he asks Count Dooku to go kill Padme, but Count Dooku doesn't want to do it himself. So Count Dooku asks Jango Fett to go kill Padme, but Jango Fett doesn't want to do it himself. So he asks his shapeshifter friend to go kill Padme, but the shapeshifter sends a robot to go kill Padme. And if you really want to be an asshole and get even more granular, the droid says, I'll send these little bugs to go kill Padme. Palpatine sends a man who sends a man who sends a shapeshifter who sends a robot who sends bugs to go kill Padme.
A big part of Palpatine's plan is that he needs Anakin to become evil and help him overthrow the Jedi. So Anakin's mom has to die, because for some reason that's the thing that pushes him over the edge into literally genocide. Anakin commits genocide in this movie, and then gets laid after committing genocide. The plan hinges not just on Anakin's mom being dead, because that wouldn't make him mad enough. Anakin's mom has to be just close enough to dead so that she'll die in his arms. Dude, I don't know how Palpatine controlled that from his offices on Coruscant, but I could understand how he controls it if his offices are at Lucasfilm. Also, when they're on Geonosis later, all the Jedi are on the brink of dying because no matter how good they are, they can't fight off these thousands of droid soldiers. But the clones arrive at just the right moment.
Look!
And if they were 5 minutes later, everyone would be dead and Palpatine would have no one to help him overthrow the Jedi Order. So, That's pretty lucky for him. I mean, he must be really quite the mastermind if he knew that was going to happen. Also, Palpatine is banking on Anakin being willing to ignore his Jedi vows and marry Padme, because if he doesn't, then he will have no incentive to turn evil in the next movie. Palpatine really has it all figured out, huh? Speaking of the next movie, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, the only prequel I can stand. Palpatine assumes he'll be rescued after getting kidnapped. Then Palpatine assumes Anakin will eventually grow in resentment towards Obi-Wan and the Jedi Order. I guess Palpatine plans both that Anakin would betray him.
I think Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord.
A Sith Lord?
And then would unbetray him by betraying the Jedi Order. It's kind of a flip-flop on a flip-flop there, Annie. Anakin chokes Padme pretty much to death, but he leaves her just alive enough to give birth before she dies, which is something the Emperor has to be counting on, because if you recall, recruiting young Skywalker is kind of an integral part of the next 3 movies after this one. You're really cutting it close here, Sheev. Trying to explain all this by saying he can predict the events of the future is ridiculous. There are too many things that have to go right in order for this to actually be his plan, so unless he is literally God of the Star Wars universe, at least a decent part of his plan has to be luck. It's as simple as that. There's no way all of this could have been accounted for when he was sitting down at his laptop writing out his plans for galactic domination. So, that's the first 3-movie phase of Emperor Palpatine's plan. It's entirely based on chance. There's no way he could have planned it out, but it succeeded nonetheless. I know this video was longer, and I really appreciate you sticking around. Thank you so much for watching. I'm not sure when the next part of these will come up. They take a while to make, so it probably won't be next week, but I will see you with a different video next Tuesday.